The world is waking up to a new reality in the Middle East. Days after the elimination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, Israel continues to target what's left of the terror group's leadership. It's also carrying out long-range strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. Chris Mitchell has more.
After eliminating Nasrallah and most of the Hezbollah leadership, Israeli jets continue targeting the remaining leaders, including a strike deep into the heart of Beirut early Monday. Netanyahu says Israel will continue attacking the terror group and taking on other threats in the region.
We're changing the strategic reality in the Middle East. Changing the balance of power brings with it the possibility of creating new alliances in our region because of a simple reason, because we're winning. Our enemies and our friends return to see Israel as it really is, a strong country, a determined country, a powerful country.
Netanyahu explained why Israel targeted the Hezbollah leader.
Nasrallah was not another terrorist. He was the terrorist. He was the axis of the axis, the central engine of Israel's axis of evil. He and his people were the architects of the plan to destroy Israel.
Islamic jihadists and their allies are mourning Nasrallah's death and swearing revenge. In the Iranian parliament and on the streets of Tehran, shouts of death to Israel rang out.
We want retaliation, a quick retaliation. We will definitely take revenge for Hassan Nasrallah's death.
Throughout Israel and even other parts of the Middle East, many celebrated. Israelis danced in Dimona, and Syrian rebels, who've long been targeted by Hezbollah in Syria, set off fireworks and celebrated. Israel is also carrying out powerful attacks on the Houthis in Yemen after they tried to hit Ben Gurion Airport this past weekend as Netanyahu returned from addressing the United Nations. In a veiled threat to Iran, the Israeli military chief of staff says the Jewish state can reach any enemy, no matter how distant.
We know how to reach very far. We know how to reach even farther, and we know how to strike there with precision.
In the U.S., the Biden administration is still calling on Israel to put the brakes on in Lebanon to avoid all-out war.
Can an all-out war in the Middle East be avoided? It has to do. We really have to avoid this.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo disagrees.
We should be saying plain and clear, finish the job. Nasrallah would be alive today if the Biden administration ceasefire had gone into effect. The entire Hezbollah leadership would be alive today if the Israelis had agreed to the ceasefire.
Well, Chris joins us now from Jerusalem. Chris, I'm so glad to hear this news cycle just moves so fast daily. What's next in Israel's military operations against Hezbollah? Is a ground invasion still possible at this point?
Andrew, I think it's not only possible, but likely inevitable. We're already hearing reports of Israeli special forces that have been taking raids into Lebanon, actually, for the last recent months. And they include using Hezbollah tunnels to go across the border. CBN News was in one of those tunnels a few years ago. They're long, they're deep. And these raids could be preparation for a wider ground operation that some believe could come as soon as this week. The Israeli defense minister said to troops on the border, the elimination of Nasrallah was an important step, but not the end. And that he said, we need you too. And that would be boots on the ground. So it really does seem inevitable. Israel's been preparing for something like this for months, calling up reserves, training, massing armor and tanks. And one of the objectives is to create a safe zone, Andrew, from the Blue Line all the way to the Litani River inside Lebanon. And yet there's thousands of Hezbollah fighters remaining, many in tunnels. But it's necessary for these residents of the north to go back home to have a safe zone there inside Lebanon.
So every day, it seems we're seeing Hezbollah's leadership being decimated, weapons degraded. Is it still a strong fighting force at this point?
Well, they still do have thousands of fighters, Andrew, but the question is, after the Biba fiasco, a couple of weeks ago, that left thousands of Hezbollah fighters disabled, blind, injured. Some were killed in that fiasco. The question is, how well coordinated are they? And are they communicating if they're not using cell phones like they were told not to? And as you mentioned, the command structure has been decimated. They still do have thousands of rockets, but the Israeli Air Force is striking them almost daily. There were more than 120 strikes today. They have a new leader, Andrew, but how long will he last? They've been fighting. They've been killing one leader after another. And so Hezbollah is certainly not the fighting force it was just 2 weeks ago.
So how badly has Hezbollah's image been weakened? Is it possible the people of Lebanon will turn on them, or will they rally for them at this point with all that's going on?
Well, their image has really been weakened significantly, and right now there's a political and a military vacuum inside Lebanon and also inside our potential allies to Israel. And Netanyahu has said, there's a changing balance of power in the Middle East and new alliances, and could they be forming behind the scenes? And are we at a tipping point inside Lebanon? And I think this is very important, Andrew. I got a message from an intercessor inside Lebanon, and he asked, do we dare pray for a new Middle East after all these things in the last couple of weeks? Is it time, he asks, for Lebanon to sign a peace treaty with Israel like Egypt and Jordan? A time for Lebanon to embrace the Abraham Accords? And he said it's very important to pray against civil strife in Lebanon, and especially between Shiites and Sunnis. Lebanon has a history of civil war, so pray for unity. And people should know that inside Lebanon, throughout the Middle East, there's really a fervent prayer movement going on throughout the region.
Chris, we can't have this conversation without mentioning Iran. So how are they responding to this decimation of its proxy army in Lebanon?
Well, I'd say, first of all, Andrew, just in the last hour or so, Benjamin Netanyahu spoke directly to the Iranian people and telling him, don't let the regime lead you into the abyss. In terms of how Iran is reacting to this, there's a cartoon of Hezbollah climbing up a rope, and at the top of the rope, Iran is letting the rope go. And it really kind of sums up how Iran's not backing up its biggest proxy in the region. And I think we're in a new Middle East. Hezbollah has been decimated. Hamas is gone. So Iran is really on the defensive. It knows its oil and nuclear facilities are vulnerable. That's how the IDF chief alluded to. And so Israel's on the rise. So I think right now we're in a new paradigm. How we go from here is a huge question. So very important to pray for Israel and the whole Middle East.
All right, Chris Mitchell. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.